The biggest mistake with borax is not using too little, it is putting it in the wrong place and watching your garden suffer for it. A lot of homeowners hear that 2 spoons of borax can wipe out garden pests, so they sprinkle it around like a cheap miracle fix. Then the ants move, the leaves start looking burned, the soil gets stressed, and the real problem is still alive underneath the surface. That is the part most people never tell you. Borax can be powerful, but it is not magic dust. Used carelessly, it can hurt the same plants you are trying to protect. Used the right way, in the right situation, it can target certain pest problems without turning your garden into a chemistry experiment. And here is where it gets interesting. The trick is not just the borax. It is what you mix it with, where you place it, and why some pests carry it back while others completely ignore it. Before you waste time, damage your soil, or fall for another backyard shortcut, you need to know the difference. Keep watching and you will learn exactly when borax works, when it fails, where to place it safely, and the simple mistake that ruins the whole trick. Borax is not a garden spray, and it is not a magic powder you throw around the yard. It works only when the right pest eats it. That one detail is why one homeowner gets results around a patio, while another sprinkles the same stuff around tomato plants and ends up with stressed soil, burned-looking leaves, and the same pest problem a week later. The trick is not really 2 spoons, the trick is delivery. Borax works best as bait, not dust. Dust just sits there, it blows into mulch, washes toward roots, and may never touch the insects causing the problem. Bait gives the pest a reason to pick it up and carry it where you cannot reach. And that is where ants become the main target. Ants follow trails, they share food, they feed the colony. If the bait tastes right and acts slowly enough, they can move it back through the system before the problem shows itself. But here is where most homeowners get fooled. Not every pest in the garden is feeding the same way. A caterpillar chewing holes in cabbage is not going to carry borax bait back to a nest. A beetle eating roses is not going to line up for sugar water. Slugs, mites, squash bugs, and aphids are not solved by pretending every pest behaves like an ant. So when someone says borax eliminates any garden pest, the useful question is not, does borax kill insects? The useful question is, will this pest actually eat the bait? Because if it will not eat it, the borax might as well be driveway sand. Now look at a real backyard situation. You walk out in the morning, coffee in hand, and notice ants running up the side of a raised bed. At first, it just looks annoying. Then you turn over a few tomato leaves and see tiny aphids tucked under the new growth. That is not random traffic. Many ants protect aphids because aphids produce a sweet liquid the ants feed on. So the ants keep coming, the aphids keep multiplying, and the plant slowly starts looking worse even though the ants are not the ones chewing the leaves. This is why spraying a few visible ants does almost nothing. You kill the ones you can see, the trail rebuilds, the aphids stay, the plant keeps declining. But here's what most people do not realize. In that situation, the ant trail is not the whole problem. It is the support system for the problem. Interrupt the ants, and you weaken the protection around the aphids. Handle the aphids, and you remove the food source pulling ants back. That combination is where borax can become useful, but there is a catch. Stronger bait can fail faster. A lot of homeowners think, if a little borax works, more must work better. That sounds logical, but ants do not cooperate with logic. If the bait is too strong, they may taste it, reject it, and shift the trail somewhere else. Now the homeowner thinks the trick failed, but the real failure happened in the cup before the bait ever touched the yard. The bait has to be attractive enough for the ants to keep feeding. If it turns them away, you have not poisoned the colony. You have trained them to avoid your setup. And there is another twist. The same bait may work near your driveway on Monday and get ignored near your garden bed on Friday. Why? Because ants do not always want the same food. Sometimes they go after sweets. Sometimes they respond better to protein or grease. Sometimes the colony's needs shift, and the bait that looked like a winner suddenly gets no traffic. That is why copying one recipe from the internet can be hit or miss. You are not just mixing ingredients, you are testing what that trail wants right now. This is where many homeowners make the biggest mistake. They sprinkle dry borax around plants like they are treating weeds in a sidewalk crack, around tomatoes, beside peppers, across mulch, near the base of shrubs, sometimes right on top of an ant mound. It feels productive because you can see it. You spread something, you covered the area, You took action, but gardens do not reward visible action, they reward accurate action. Borax contains boron and plants only need tiny amounts of boron. Too much in the wrong place can injure plants, especially if it builds up near roots. That is why spreading borax through a vegetable bed is a risky shortcut. You may be trying to kill ants, but you are also putting the material where roots, rainwater, pets, and soil life can contact it. That is not control, that is guessing. The second mistake is leaving bait exposed. A homeowner mixes bait on a bottle cap or a scrap of cardboard, sets it beside the garden, and leaves it overnight. Then the sprinkler kicks on, or a storm rolls through, or the dog noses around it. By morning, the bait is diluted, smeared into the soil, and no longer doing what it was supposed to do. That is how a cheap trick becomes a yard problem. The correct method is much tighter. First, identify the pest. If you see holes in leaves, check for caterpillars, beetles, or slugs before thinking about borax. If leaves are curling, look for aphids or mites. If a plant is wilting, check water, roots, heat stress, and soil before blaming bugs. Do not treat the garden just because something moved. Follow the evidence, look under leaves, check the tender new growth, inspect stems, watch where the ants are going. Are they climbing toward aphids? Entering a crack near the patio? Moving into a potted plant, running along the edge of the foundation? That path tells you whether bait makes sense. If it is truly an ant trail, use a protected bait station. Not a pile, not a dusting, not a ring around the plant. A small covered container works better than open bait. Use a shallow plastic container, a small jar with tiny holes, or a simple bait holder that lets ants in while keeping rain, pets, and larger animals out. Place it near the trail, not on the plant. That part matters more than people think. Ants are already following a route. If you place bait 6 feet away because it looks convenient to you, they may never find it. Put it beside the trail they are already using, and the ants do the searching for you. Then start mild. You are not trying to make a toxic puddle, you are trying to make food they accept. For sweet-feeding ants, a sugar-based bait is often the first test. If they ignore sweet bait, a protein or grease-based bait may get more interest, but it still belongs inside a protected station. Now watch what they do. If ants gather and keep feeding, leave it alone, do not poke it, do not move it, do not improve it after 20 minutes. One of the easiest ways to ruin a bait setup is to keep disturbing it because you are impatient. Ants may take time to recruit. A few scouts can turn into steady traffic later. If you move the station every time it looks slow, you reset the test before it tells you anything. But do not leave old bait forever either. If it dries out, gets moldy, fills with dirt, or stops drawing ants, refresh it or remove it. Dead bait sitting beside a garden is not pest control. It is clutter with chemicals in it. And here is the part that saves people from wasting half a weekend. Sometimes the ants are not the real enemy. If you see ants moving through mulch but the plants look healthy, there are no aphids, no mound in a walking path, and no trail entering the house, treatment may not be needed. That sounds less exciting than a secret trick, but it is what experienced homeowners learn the hard way. Not every insect sighting needs a response. The wrong response can create a bigger problem than the insects. Now, if ants are protecting aphids, handle both sides of the issue. Use the bait station to reduce ant traffic, then deal with the aphids directly. A firm spray of water can knock aphids off many plants. Pruning heavily infested tips can reduce pressure. Insecticidal soap can help on soft-bodied insects when used correctly and tested carefully on the plant first. That is a cleaner strategy than dumping borax around the bed and hoping the garden sorts it out. And there is one more overlooked detail: borax should stay away from edible plant surfaces. You are not seasoning lettuce, you are not dusting strawberries, you are not sprinkling powder where it can splash onto herbs after the next rain. The bait belongs in a station near the traffic, away from harvest surfaces, roots, pets, kids, chickens, and runoff. That is the difference between using borax as a tool and using it as a backyard gamble. So the real trick is not that borax eliminates any garden pest. It does not. The real trick is knowing when the pest's behavior makes borax useful. If the pest feeds on bait and shares food with a colony, you have a path. If it chews leaves, sucks plant juices, hides under squash stems, or crawls through damp mulch looking for soft tissue, borax is probably the wrong answer. Same product, different pest, completely different result. Before using it, ask 3 questions. Is this actually an ant problem? Can I place the bait where only ants can reach it? Can I keep it away from roots, leaves, rain, pets, children, and anything I plan to eat? If the answer is no, fix the setup before you touch the borax. Because the homeowners who get results are not attacking the whole yard. They are feeding one trail, testing one bait, protecting the garden around it. And that is why the smallest container in the yard can do more than a whole spoonful scattered in the wrong place. So when people say 2 spoons of borax can eliminate any garden pest, the truth is more specific. It can eliminate the pest problem only when the pest is part of a feeding trail, especially ants carrying bait back to a colony. The buried trick is not the powder, it is the delivery system. This is the part that got buried under bad backyard advice. Borax does not win by covering more ground. It wins by being carried. The moment you sprinkle it across the garden, you stop using the trick and start creating a soil problem. So the real lesson is this: borax only works when it is used as bait, placed where the pest will actually feed, and kept away from the soil, roots, pets, and anything you plan to eat. That is the part most backyard tips leave out. 2 spoons of borax can look like a powerful trick, but the power is not in scattering it across the garden. The power is in control. One small bait station near the right trail can do more than a whole handful spread in the wrong place. For homeowners, that matters because a bad pest treatment does not just waste money. It can stress healthy plants, push ants to a new trail, leave aphids protected, and make the yard look treated while the real problem keeps growing. So before you treat the whole yard, identify the pest, follow the trail, and use the smallest controlled setup that solves the actual problem. And if this helped you look at garden pests a little differently, hit the like button so more homeowners can find it before they make the same mistake. If you want practical fixes that actually make sense around the house and yard, subscribe and stay with the channel. Because in the next video there is another common yard mistake that keeps ants, roaches, and mosquitoes coming back even after you spray bait or clean. It is not inside the trap. It is usually sitting right beside the house, quietly feeding the next infestation.